Matt Walsh is returning to the big screen. And boy, does this one look good. Stay tuned. Well, good evening and welcome back to another week of Explain, another week where we engage the culture from a biblical perspective in a manner which glorifies God. And this week there were a lot of things that went on. There were plenty of depressing things. We did an episode a while back now about the ERLC and whether or not the ERLC should be abolished, right? As Pastor Tom Askell had proposed at the Southern Baptist Convention annual meeting this year. But as in a very strange turn of events, the leader of the ERLC, Brent Leatherwood, was this week he was removed and then put back into place as the leader within a span of I don't know. I want to say it was 12 to 18 hours roughly. It was just crazy. It was crazy. And also, of course, I think it's been since the last time I was with you that President Joe Biden has officially dropped out of the presidential race. And we will talk a little bit about that later. But you know what? All this stuff is really, it just gets you down. It just gets you down. So this week I wanted to talk about something that made me happy, okay? Something that made me happy. And you know what made me really happy? What made me really happy is the post that Matt Walsh put out about the fact that he is going to be, he's already finished making another movie, another kind of a documentary, kind of like a funny documentary. This is sure to be just amazing and a must watch. Let's look at the post that Matt put out announcing that he was going to be doing this. All right, we're going to be looking at a couple of things, or a couple of posts that people made about this, but let's start with Matt Walsh's post himself, or post itself. This was posted by Matt Walsh on July 23rd, so that was Tuesday. This is what he says. Over a year ago, I embarked on a personal journey into anti-racism and DEI. Now I can finally share it with all of you. My new film, Am I Racist?, is only in theaters on September 13th. And I would just encourage you to watch the trailer. The trailer is incredible. It is pretty crazy. Apparently, this is what it would seem at this stage of what we know. Matt went undercover to a bunch of different places. I guess, kind of pretending to be a leftist or a woke type of person, someone who supported DEI and all that other stuff. He went undercover as that type of person, so that he could bring out the honest, unfiltered commentary of these crazy people. Okay, and I cannot wait to see what more is there besides the trailer. But I mean, the trailer really got me excited for it. There's one scene where I think it's this woman who's at a table of some sort, who's basically like, yeah, we shouldn't even, America is so bad and so, I guess, racist or whatever, that we shouldn't even try to save it. We shouldn't even try to make it better. Right, so it's funny because a lot of people will say, yeah, we need to have DEI, which we're going to talk more about that a little bit later on, but we need to have DEI, which is basically race and intersectionality based hiring and selection. We need to have that, they say, in order to make this community, this culture around us better and less racist. But then at the same time, they're like, yeah, we should just try to destroy America, get rid of it. So they claim that they're doing something good, or they claim that they're doing something that they think is good, that they think will make things better. But then at the same time, they're like, we shouldn't make things better, right? That was a part of the trailer that was particularly amusing to me. But it's just interesting. It's a really cool way to try to bring out the truth about what these people actually think, is to get them in their natural habitat, to get them in a place where they're just going to be unfiltered. One thing that shocked me is that, really, believe it or not, this anti-racism type of movement, the radical, the radical extreme version of it, which basically says that you should show partiality, that you should show partiality against people because they are a certain skin color, in preference to people who are minority groups, people who are oppressed groups. And basically they say oppressed groups. When they say oppressed groups, what they mean is people who they say have been oppressed in years past. So, for example, like a Black American or something like that, right? They would say that person is an oppressed group, and that therefore they should be shown preference. They should even be hired, for example, even if their skill set is worse than maybe someone who is white, for example, that's also being interviewed for the same job position, for example. That's a simple way to put it. But one thing that I found interesting is that this DEI stuff is actually, it's not at its core a race-based issue. It's not. And the reason that I know that is because I found it shocking how many white people that Matt Walsh interviewed just in that trailer, that were basically, they were pushing this stuff. And it's like, man, do you realize what you're doing? Like, it doesn't even make any sense, right? But I guess that's besides the point. I want to look at a couple of other posts from some other people. This is from Daily Wire. Of course, Matt Walsh does a lot of his stuff in conjunction with Daily Wire. It says, I'm proud to announce that Matt Walsh has a brand new movie, and this time it's coming to the big screen. This time it's more than just a documentary. It's a social experiment. And it's just the explanation for what this is here. Jeremy Bowring introduces Matt Walsh's film, Am I Racist?, coming to theaters September 13th. What I am hoping that we will see from this movie, this is what I'm hoping to see. I haven't pre-watched the movie, haven't seen anything, none of that. But this announcement is just hot off the press, and everybody's talking about it. And what I hope to see, and what I think that other people are also hoping that they see, is the exposure, right? And that was really, I think, the aim of what Matt was going for, is the exposure of what these people really think, what they really think. Okay. Because a lot of times people who push this type of agenda, who push that we shouldn't be impartial, that we should show favoritism to people of a certain skin color or people of a certain demographic group, what a lot of these people will do is they won't tell you what they really believe on the surface until you really get in with them, until they feel comfortable actually telling you what they really believe. There was a point where Matt Walsh, at the end of the trailer, where he was interviewing someone who was basically like, what's your name? And he said, oh, my name's Matt. And of course he's undercover. Like, it's funny. He's wearing a wig, and I think he said he was wearing different glasses and shoes, and I don't know if he was joking on that last part, but he was like wearing a wig that kind of, I guess, disguised him a little bit. It was funny. But this person who he was interviewing at the end of the trailer was basically like, what's your name? And he said, oh, my name's Matt. And she said, okay. She goes, I just have to be careful, who I'm talking to. And that really does encapsulate how a lot of people who are fully like radically bought into DEI think. They want to make sure they know who they're talking to before they really let the crazy out, right? And that's what's going on here. This post here by Jon Root. Matt Walsh's newest film, Am I a Racist?, is a must-watch. In a world full of so much DEI nonsense, we need this and a few laughs. Yeah, even the trailer, man, the trailer is funny. It is funny. Like, you got to watch it, man. And this is really important because, let me just, I know I kind of talked about DEI a little bit before, but DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it really takes, you might remember this, I feel like I keep referring back to this episode because it really is so important. But if you haven't watched the episode that we did a while back on redefinition, that is really crucial to kind of help us think about the moment that we're in culturally right now. But again, you see redefinition at work with diversity, equity, and inclusion, because a lot of people would take those three words and say, seems good, right? It seems, even a Christian might say, it seems like we should be diverse, It seems like, depending on what you mean by equity, a lot of people would say, oh yeah, it seems like we should try to be fair, right? They try to define it that way. And it seems like we should try to include people, right? Like that's, a Christian might think of it. Some Christians might think of it as simply as that. But that's not what they mean by diversity, equity, and inclusion. What they mean is that there are certain groups of people that they've identified who they claim have been oppressed for a certain amount of time, for a long period of time in some cases, right? Like like I mentioned, like a black person, right? And a lot of times they'll say they'll point back to slavery, for example, which was a terrible thing, right? That was terrible, right? The chattel slavery was horrible, it was awful, right? Should never have happened here in America. But they'll point back to that and they'll say, okay, because this class of people was oppressed, we now need to give them reparations. We now need to give them things, free handouts, things for free. We now need to prefer them in job applications and things like that. We need to hire them even if their skill set, even if a specific black person's skill set is not as good as maybe a white person's skill set that's also applying for the job. And this is also done, this also applies a lot of times to women, right? People will say, they'll point to women and say, that's another class of people that's been oppressed for a long period of time. And so they say, well, if you have a choice between a man and a woman, and the woman has not as good of a skill set as the man who's applying for this specific job in this specific situation, then you should hire the woman, even though maybe she's not as good for this job as the man is, even though maybe the man has a better skill set, a better resume, than the woman. You hire the woman, right? That's what DEI would teach. And they do this, I mean, they're even starting to do this with like homosexuality and stuff. If you are a black lesbian woman, and you are applying for a job and you have a worse skill set than a white straight male, for example, or even maybe a black straight male, then you, as the lesbian black woman, are going to potentially get the job, even though your skill set is not as good as the black straight male. Hopefully that makes sense. It is complicated because it's not logical, okay? So it's complicated to understand because it really doesn't make very much sense. Because even as Christians, right, if we think about this in a Christian way, we know what the Bible says, what Proverbs chapter 20, verse 23 says. It says, unequal weights are an abomination to the Lord, and false scales are not good. That's Proverbs 20, verse 23. And so this is the situation that we find ourselves in. We find ourselves in a situation where you could very well have two people apply for a job, and the person who is less skilled for the job gets it because of what they look like, because of what their skin color is, because of what their gender is, because of what their sexual orientation is. We live in a culture where that can happen and does happen routinely. And so that would be DEI in a nutshell. And I think it's very important that Matt is putting out this documentary now, because, we talk about the cultural moment we're in. Joe Biden just dropped out of the race, the race for president. So now it appears, by all reports indicate that Kamala Harris will be running instead of him for president. And most of the arguments that I hear, remember, let's keep our categories straight. You have now Kamala Harris, who is a black woman who is running against Donald Trump, who is a white male. And most of the arguments that I have heard since Kamala officially announced her bid for president, most of the arguments that I have heard for voting for Kamala over Trump is that she is a black woman. Okay, let that sink in. Okay, the reason why people want to vote for Kamala is not because she has a good stance on foreign policy, they might say, or not because they think that she has a specific stance on abortion, or not because they say she has a specific stance on marriage, or not because of what she says about immigration, or not because of any of that. You know why? You know why they're not saying that? Because they can't really find anything good in those viewpoints, because all of her viewpoints on all of those things are not very good. Okay. So what do? Well, they point to, she's a black woman. And wouldn't it be amazing for America if we could finally elect a black woman to be the president? Okay. Now, here is the problem. If you look throughout the Old Testament, clearly, when women and children ruled over a nation, it was a sign of God's judgment on that nation. Okay, so just take that and store that in the back of your head, Christian. Okay, so there is that as well. But it is so interesting that Walsh is putting out this documentary on September 13th, which is under 2 months from Election Day. I think it will be very important, and I think people who are feeling like maybe they could be swayed by that argument that, Kamala is a black woman, so we should vote for her to be the president just because of that. Man, you got to go watch this film. You got to watch this film, because this film is going to show you that DEI is nonsense. It's nonsense. And we shouldn't make decisions based off of the color of people's skin. I mean, and even as Christians, come on, we got to know this. We got to know that that these unequal weights and measures are an abomination to the Lord. He doesn't like it when we're showing favoritism to people based off of the way that they look. We got to know this. I mean, this is not rocket science by any stretch of the mind. Okay, let's keep going here. I want to look at a couple of other posts regarding this, and just show you why, as far as on a policy level, Christian, there is no Christian case for Kamala Harris. I found it interesting. I probably should have shared the post before I said that. But William Wolfe said this: "The Christian Case for Kamala Harris" by David French, coming any day now. And what he's just referring to is the fact that it seems like there is a certain group of Christians who will find any way to get you to vote for anyone besides Donald Trump, even if he is obviously the better candidate for a Christian to vote for in this election. He says, this is another post. It looks like he took a screenshot of something that David French said, and this is what triggered that last post from Wolfe. But he says, David French is hopeful, excited, invigorated by Kamala Harris. And then what French said here that he's referring to is, watching the enthusiasm among Democrats for Harris, I'm reminded how we can underestimate the power of hope. 4 days ago, there was no real hope for the Biden campaign, and even though there are serious reasons for concern about Harris as a campaigner, the mere fact that she can beat Donald Trump has energized people beyond what I thought possible. Hope is intoxicating. That is just gross. That is just gross. I mean, I find it really funny sometimes how people like this try to paint themselves as like some kind of political moderate, right? Like French is almost trying to just be like, I'm just being objective, I'm just reading the room. I'm just reading the situation. But he's obviously letting his bias show through. He's letting his feelings about this show through. We know that he's, like Wolfe said, David French is hopeful, excited, invigorated by Kamala Harris. French is tapping into his own feelings here, most likely, in order to make this post in the first place. And just, Christian, to warn you against what would happen if you bought into the argument that there is a Christian, that there is a Christian case for Kamala Harris. Let's look at this post here by Colin Smothers. He says, remember when journalist David Daleedian exposed Planned Parenthood for selling aborted baby parts, and California's Attorney General responded by prosecuting the journalist while protecting Planned Parenthood. That Attorney General was Kamala Harris. So, Christians, if you care even one iota about the unborn, about the millions of babies that have been murdered in the womb, you will not vote for Kamala Harris. You can't. All right. And we've talked about voting for Trump, and I've addressed that on another episode. I'm going to vote for him. And I've explained that on another episode that you can go watch sometime. I don't agree with his stance on abortion, and I'm still going to vote for him. But anyway, I just think that if someone makes the mistake of saying, well, Harris is a black woman and so she should be the president, that's not what the president is for. The job description for president doesn't say we are looking for a black woman to fill this position. No, the job description for president is you have to be the leader of the pretty much I would say, the most powerful free nation in the world. Okay? You have to be the leader of that nation. And so when we are looking for someone to fill that position, we have to think of who would fit the qualifications for this? Who would be the best person to do this job? Okay? And if you want to remain a free nation, Christian, specifically as it relates to your freedom religiously to protest against abortion, for example, you're not going to want to vote for Kamala Harris. You're not. And to buy into the DEI line that because she's a black woman you should vote for her is nonsense. You can't do that. And if you feel like you're going to do that, you got to watch Matt Walsh's film, which is why I'm so happy that he's coming out with it at this moment, at this time. And it is funny how things have shifted so dramatically in the course of 1 week. I look at what Brian Sauve had to say, and man, it's like you poke your head up and look around for a minute, and it's maddening, right? It's like there's just a whirlwind of things going on around us. Like I mentioned at the top of this show, the ERLC, just going crazy, and then the Democrat Party going crazy. Scott Aniol put out a poll. I didn't check to see the results of it, but it was funny. He said which organization or which group is more of a dumpster fire right now, and the options were the Democrat Party and the ERLC. And basically, it's like, yeah, it's basically the same thing right now, right? It's just a disaster. But you pick up your head and you're like, man, what's it going to be today? I heard, I think it was a show, one of James White's recent Dividing Line shows, where he said, man, you live in a country right now where you wake up in the morning and it's like, what's it going to be today? What crazy political or cultural thing is going to happen today, right? That's really how you wake up. And it can be disheartening. But all that to say, I want to point you to what Brian Sauve had to say. Seriously, guys, go read Psalm 37 right now if you're feeling overwhelmed by it all. Chew on that psalm for a few days and let the Lord reorient your perspective. Our hope is living, eternal, immortal, inexorable. The Lord is on our side. Amen. Man, I'm getting shivers down my spine just thinking about that, right? We live in a culture that is making war against Christians. It is. It's making war against us. But if God is for us, who can be against us, right? So let that invigorate you and encourage you. And I'm going to take Brian's advice. You could read the whole chapter if you'd like. I'm going to read the first 7 verses of Psalm 37. It says this: "Fret not yourself because of evildoers. Be not envious of wrongdoers, for they will soon fade like the grass and wither like the green herb." So you think about Kamala Harris, for example, an evildoer, a wrongdoer, right? We have to be clear as Christians. And she will either bow the knee to the Lord or she will wither away and fade away in time, but the Lord will remain and he will stay as king. "Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him and he will act." Imagine that, man. Just imagine as a Christian, man, the whole world could be crashing down and you could be delighting yourself in the Lord. Delight yourself in him. This is amazing, right? "He will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your justice as the noonday." So he is one who will act. He doesn't just stand politically neutral, you could say, on the sidelines, right? No, he's going to act for the cause of his people and for his glory and his kingdom. "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices." And man, what an encouraging thing to remember in the day and age in which we live. I'm thankful to Brian for pointing that out. Man, just an awesome encouragement from the Word of God. And I think that in this moment, people could be very easily swayed by the idea that we have a black woman running for president. But do not be deceived. Do not trick yourself into supporting someone who supports the murder of the unborn and who supports sin. Don't be deceived. Instead, fall in line behind the Lord, your God, your King, Christian. All right? Well, have a great week, and I'll see you next time.